Good evening. Welcome to the F1Stop show. I'm your host, Sam Oni, and with me is Wes Spearman. This is episode 11. Wes, how are you tonight?
Yeah, I'm all right. I had quite a busy week, and obviously trying to. I mean, for the viewers and listeners won't know, it started about 40 minutes late, trying to faff around with different meetings, basically trying to record them. But since because Zoom's introduced this 40-minute limit for even just one-to-one calls now, which is really annoying. So we've been trying to faff around with Teams, trying to get that to it. But yeah, we're back on Zoom. But yeah, it's all good now. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Same here. Finding out that Zoom is now putting a 40-minute limit with just two people is rather annoying. But anyway, let's get into it. So we had the first ever Miami Grand Prix last weekend on Sunday. And well, when I ask you how do you rate the race, I wonder what your thoughts would be. But before that, Max Verstappen got his third win of the season, winning the very first race in Florida for Red Bull. What do you make of his performance?
It's another class race from Verstappen, really. I mean, overtook Leclerc, quite a good move actually, on lap 9. He went, was it round the outside and the right hander, then to maintain that lead going into the left hander. And once he did that, it was pretty much curtains for Leclerc. Verstappen just sailed off into the distance, which it just goes to show what that Red Bull engine can do when it actually works. I mean, Verstappen's won every race he's finished, including that sprint race. So yeah, it looks like, at least for now anyway, Red Bull have seemed to have got their act together with the engine. I know we had reliability issues earlier on in the weekend, but when it matters, that Red Bull engine sort of proved its worth. And yeah, I wouldn't say is the title fight really on between these, because it is only what, five races in this, 4 races. I can't remember now. Yeah, there's still loads of time left in the season, of course, but yeah, it just goes to show that if Verstappen and the engine um, don't make any mistakes, if the engine's reliable, then they are a serious contender for back-to-back world drivers titles. And obviously, Red Bull will be wanting that constructor. They haven't had that since what must be 2013 at least, if not 2012. But yeah, all in all, a pretty solid weekend for Verstappen, for Red Bull Verstappen in particular, and I think Perez got fourth in the end. So overall, a pretty good result for Red Bull.
Indeed. And Ferrari, pretty good so far, if to summarize their season. But good to see Carlos Sainz on the podium again, third place. I
Yeah,
think
very.
the Spaniard will be very happy with his result, given his last couple races in Australia and Imola.
Yeah, I was gonna come on to that. Yeah, it's great to see Sainz back on the podium, almost where he belongs, really, in that Ferrari car with the pace it's got this year, and obviously off the back of I think it's two DNFs at Imola and Australia. Yeah, he would have really wanted that podium. It's whether he was disappointed he didn't get second place or even a race win, but a podium is a podium at the end of the day for Sainz, and yeah, off the back of a couple poor weekends, yeah, that podium will mean a lot to him in Ferrari.
Indeed. So today's episode, the magic number, if you like, for today is 19. 19 being the points difference Max between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen after the Dutchman's win, cutting the Monegasque drivers' lead to 19 points, as said. So Verstappen is on 85 points and Charles Leclerc is on 104. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good from the Dutchman.
I mean, even this early on in the season, there is already a little bit of a gap sort of forming, even just between the top two. And pretty much everyone else below, really, because as you said, Leclerc on 104 points in first, Verstappen second on 85. Then there's another, I think another 19-point gap if my maths is correct. Probably isn't, but Perez on 66 points. George Russell in fourth with 59 points. Mr. Consistent this year is George Russell, and then obviously Carlos Sainz after that with 53, and then there's another bit of a gap to Lewis Hamilton on 36, who's actually jumped Lando Norris. He's now 1 point ahead of Norris, where I think it was pretty much the opposite last time out. So yeah, he is already the top two, just sort of putting a bit of a gap between them and pretty much the other 18 drivers, really. But you do see some interesting, I suppose, battles. I mean, Perez and Russell and Sainz as well, to an extent, battling for that third position already. You've got Hamilton and Norris separated by 1 point. When you got 6th, 7th, and 8th separated by 6 points, you got 6th to 9th separated by 12 points, which in the midfield is quite close. Yeah, it's good to see that the gaps between the drivers are relatively close. I mean, I can't remember what it was like last year around, for example, but yeah, it's looking like with these new regulations and these new cars that it has made racing a bit better, and teams are having more battles on track, and yeah, which obviously goes to show, given the what I think anyway is quite close between, especially the midfield, that sort of sixth and below. Really, it goes to show that the gaps are smaller, and yeah, hopefully I think anyway that the cars this year are better for racing. But yeah, we'll have to go and see compared to some of the other tracks. I'm trying to think of boring, someone like France, for example. If that's going to be a boring race, or I mean, Monaco probably will be, just because the cars this year are even bigger, so it'll be even more difficult to overtake around Monaco. Yeah, like tracks like France, Spain, those typical dull tracks where they're all right tracks, but you don't really get great racing. It'll be those sort of tracks where once we go to them, I think Spain is coming up relatively soon, and France maybe like June, July sort of time, can't remember now. But it'll be when we go to those tracks, and if one of them is an absolute belter, then we can say that yeah, these cars really have improved racing and entertainment for the fans as well.
Yeah. So and during the race, the race itself, it was pretty much plain sailing, shall we say, for Max Verstappen. You know, nothing really happened in Miami, despite all the hype we were getting months leading towards it. But towards the latter stages of the race, lap 41, McLaren's Lando Norris and Pierre Gasly of AlphaTauri, they came together, resulting in the British driver Norris spinning out and losing, I believe, his front right wing tire. Sorry.
Yeah, it was one of his tires. I think Gasly, he ran wide in a couple of the corners and went actually quite slowly. And whether he realised Norris, or whether he didn't realise rather, that Norris wasn't coming up on the inside, or Norris didn't realise that Gasly was coming back onto the racing line, I'm not too sure. I'm more inclined perhaps to say Gasly's fault than Norris. I think Norris was just minding his business, and then Gasly sort of just cut across a bit. That's how I see it anyway. Yeah, a bit of a shame considering I can't remember where Norris was running at the time, but I think it was in the points. And yeah, it's just a bit of a shame really, but it happens, I suppose, on a street circuit when it does tend to be a bit narrower than an actual circuit. Of course, you got the walls there, so you got to have a full safety car for a few laps rather than just a VSC, which I suppose made the race a bit more interesting. I suppose just shook things up a little bit, as usually happens with a safety car. Yeah, personally, I'd go sort of like 75-25 Gasly Norris, I think, in terms of who was at fault for that.
Well, the way I see it, I thought Gasly was going on the outside as he was before, and maybe he didn't. I think he saw it maybe too late, seeing where the noise was coming from. I mean, that's how I see it. I don't think it was Gasly's fault per se, but it was just unfortunate for Lando Norris to have spun and his tire going off. So yeah, we see that in racing a lot, and I'm sure the drivers learn from it, and try and improve on to the next race. And that wasn't the only crash or collision coming together that we had in Miami. We also had Mick Schumacher and the Haas coming together with Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin. Yeah, those two, they have quite the relationship off the track, but on the track they came together, and yeah, it just wasn't great for either
Yeah,
driver.
I mean, as you said, the relationship that Seb and Mick have it's not necessarily a father-son relationship because Seb's far too young to be to be Mick's dad, but it's that sort of mentor-mentee sort of role with
Yeah,
what he Seb sort of just helping Mick around more than anything. But yeah, when it comes onto the racetrack and you're battling for what would have been Mick Schumacher's first points in Formula One, um,
wow.
he probably deserves points. He's drove all right, especially last season. In that complete dog of a Haas car. He's been little bit played sort of second fiddle to Kevin Magnussen so far this year. Because Magnussen's brought home points on at least a couple of occasions, maybe three. Whereas Mick is obviously yet to get off the mark. Um, so yeah, I'm not too sure what really happened because it looked like Vettel turned in. I wouldn't say early. Um, Vettel going trying to go around the outside, I think, and Mick just sort of went straight on, didn't really turn into the corner. Um,
Mm.
Obviously aiming for a slightly different line, given their different positions on the track. Um, I think Mick said on the radio something like it was his corner, but I think Vettel was sufficiently alongside that Mick should have gave him the space, and I think at that point there were still a few laps to go, like 4 or 5 laps to go, so maybe Mick could have had another opportunity on the penultimate lap or something to get Vettel back. Who knows? But yeah, it is a bit of a shame. But I think that's a bit of inexperience from Mick Schumacher dealing with that sort of situation. Because yeah, you really want your first points. Yes, it is ninth position at the end of the day, but to get your first points in F1 is quite a monumentous achievement, I suppose. Especially if you're in a Haas car, which is typically vying for P19, let alone P9. Yeah, but I think it's just inexperience on Mick's part that happened. I think Vettel was just doing what he did, looking for that racing line, going for the overtake. Which, I mean, who wouldn't do that? You are a racing driver. Um, but yeah, I'll probably go. It's slightly more Mick's fault than Vettel's on that. But I'm putting that one down to an experience, I think.
Yeah, and so then Mercedes from the start of the season, well, their season so far hasn't been great, and it's still not great. The question is, well, will it be great? That's the question. Will their season be great? And I feel I'm just repeating myself with the word great. Great. Um, right, George Russell, P5, still the first driver this season to finish in the top five of every race that he has taken part in. Consistency. That's how you describe George Russell. Consistency. He
Yeah,
just keeps
absolutely.
getting better and better. Now
I
just
mean,
need to add a few more podiums to it,
yeah, it would be
preferably
nice.
P1.
Preferably, yeah, it would be nice for him to get a podium at some point this season, and for him to get a race win as well. Um, I just made it full screen. um, yeah, I think he started P12, I think, in qualifying, quite low down. So yeah, for him to get back up to fifth place and overtake Lewis Hamilton, who started in sixth, finished in sixth, is is brilliant, and just go to show that whether Hamilton's struggling with the car, I'm not too sure. But Hamilton's performances certainly aren't as, well, first of all, consistent as Russell, as we mentioned, is the only driver so far to finish in the top 5 for all 4 or 5 races, however many have gone now. Yeah, it's certainly signs of improvement for Mercedes to finish 5th and 6th, a double point scoring race for them. I think they did come into the weekend with an improved front wing, I think, sort of try and get rid of as much of the porpoising as possible. There's obviously something still isn't quite right with the car, hence why they're challenging for 5th and 6th and not 1st and 2nd. Yeah, it's certainly signs of improvement for Mercedes, and so is Hamilton in particular off the back of certainly last weekend, or last race rather. Yeah, George Russell, I mean, what a start he's having to his first full season in a Mercedes car. And yes, it's not where Mercedes would want to be, battling for almost best of the rest, if you like, but certainly where they were, as you said, at the start of the season, in those first 2 rounds and in testing as well. The improvement they've shown over 4 or 5 races. I seriously can't remember how many races there have been now. I think it's 5. Hey, it's positive signs for Mercedes and Mercedes fans, and maybe they can be on for a race win, or at the very least challenging for the podium sooner rather than later.
However, the question still remains, with 18 races to go, if my maths is correct. Will Mercedes win a race this season? That's the question. And the following question, who will win it? Will it be George Russell, or will it be Lewis Hamilton? That's what we want to hear. That's what we want. Because if Mercedes go the whole 23 races without a win, that's probably going to be the biggest racing L that we've witnessed.
That's a pretty way of putting it. I still think Mercedes will win a race this year. Don't know where, don't know who. At the moment, I'd probably have to say Russell over Hamilton.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just have to, surely, with all the money and experience and the amount of mechanics and engineers Mercedes have got. Surely they must figure out why their car isn't as quick as Ferrari and Red Bull. And, I mean, if it takes till Abu Dhabi or Brazil for them to figure it out, then I doubt it will be. I mean, I've said over the last 2 weeks, I reckon it'll be around that summer break when they get their first win, either just before or just after. But yeah, whether that'll be too late for them to be still in the fight for the Constructors title, and to some extent it already is. It just depends what the engineers and all the basically engineers really over the place in Brackley and wherever their base is in Germany can just figure out these issues, whether it's the engine, whether it's the aero. I'm not too sure whether Mercedes are. There might not be. That's why they're still battling for 5th place. I still think they'll get a race win. I mean, they're not 8 times Constructors champions for no reason. I still think around that summer break they'll get their first win.
I mean, I did say a few episodes back that they should. I did say a few episodes back that at least if by Silverstone Mercedes don't have a race win, then I'm not gonna watch F1 again this season. I think I did say that. But anyway, there's still hope. There's still hope. Still believing. So predictions then. Let's see. How did we do for predictions?
I think we both went Verstappen for the race win, so we obviously got a point there.
That's true.
I can't remember.
That's good.
I think I guessed Perez for pole and he got 4th. So not a great prediction for me there. You went Verstappen for pole. I can't remember how close it was between him and Leclerc. Really not far at all. It was less than a tenth of a second between the two of them. So all so close, so close to another point for pole position and driver of the day. I can't remember who got driver of the day actually.
I think Verstappen got driver of the day.
I would have thought so. Yeah. I mean, you predicted Bottas, who I think went
Yeah.
backwards in the race, started in fifth, went back down to seventh. And I predicted Daniel Ricciardo, who I don't remember seeing at all during the race, to be honest. Where did he start? Started 14th and finished 13th. So another poor weekend for Ricciardo, really.
Yeah.
I would have hoped he would at least be scoring points in the McLaren, even if it is just one or two, literally. Yeah, I mean, McLaren are sort of jumping up and down at the moment in the Grand Prix. Like, race before Miami, they were doing pretty well. I think Norris got a podium in Imola again. Ricardo, I think he DNF Ricardo that race, but I think in Australia they were both pretty good. And then obviously this time round, no points for Ricardo and a DNF for Lando. So it's up and down times for for being a McLaren fan at the moment.
So, and lastly, let's wrap it up with the driver's standings and the constructors, shall we? So, I've got the constructors right here. The top two are separated by 6 points. That's how close it is, with Ferrari out in front, 157 points. Red Bull, 151 points. And then you've got Mercedes in third, McLaren fourth, Alfa Romeo. Pretty good fifth place.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, yes, 30 out of the 31 points have come from Valtteri Bottas, but when you consider they were probably the second worst car on the grid last year, to be in fifth place at the moment is a hell of an achievement from Alfa Romeo. I mean, they're beating Alpine, they're beating AlphaTauri and Aston Martin, all of whom, and Aston Martin didn't have a great year last year, but AlphaTauri and Alpine were certainly mixing it up in the midfield. So yeah, for Alfa Romeo to be beating those teams, yeah, they're only 5 points ahead of Alpine, but at this stage of the season, for them to be fifth is, yeah, I think that's a great achievement.
And as for the drivers, we've already spoken about the top two with we've already spoken about the top two with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen being separated by 19 points. Just looking at it, we've said it before, but Hamilton, Norris, Bottas, Ocon, 12 points between them, the difference. That's pretty tight. It's very tight, as we've mentioned. And I think as the season goes on, it's going to get even tighter. I think because if you compare it between last season and this season, the thing about last season, it was all very spread out. Teams were on different levels. There were teams who were overperforming McLaren. Teams were underperforming. I don't know, let's say Alpine or AlphaTauri. But it's kind of different this time, and that's what we like to see. And the new regulations, they've played a very big part.
Yeah, I mean, we said earlier just how close that sort of midfield is at the moment. I think that's already showing in those points differences. I mean, Hamilton's 1 point ahead of Norris in the McLaren, who's 5 points ahead of Bottas, who's 6 points ahead of Ocon, and then there is a bit of a gap between Ocon and Magnussen between 9th and 10th. But even just below that, you've got Magnussen on 15, Ricciardo on 11, Tsunoda on 10. And for the points positions that those three are going to be challenging for, those sort of 8th, 9th, and 10th, just a couple. If someone has a good couple of races and gets, I can't remember how many points you get for 8.5, 3, 4 points. If someone picks up 6 to 8 points, then and one of the other drivers only scrapes a point or two, or fails to score, then that they could leapfrog one of the other two drivers in that drivers' championship. Um, so it is certainly close towards more sort of the back, well, the middle of the midfield, really, the middle of the pack, sort of 8th to 12th, if you like, in the races is, and certainly in the drivers' championship as well, is where it gets close, and you could see drivers leapfrogging other drivers sort of every race or two, really. But yeah, there are only two drivers still not to get off the marking point. Three if you include Nico Hulkenberg, who what 2 races I think at the start of the season. Mick Schumacher still yet to get off the mark in F1. Same with Nicholas Latifi. And if Schumacher played it a bit more sensibly this weekend, then arguably he could have had his first point. But I think it will come this year. It has to, with the pace that Haas have got. Yeah, they're not, I suppose, at the top of the midfield or middle of the midfield, really, but they've got a much better car than last year, and I think Magnussen has already proved that. So I don't think it'll be too long until Schumacher picks up his first points. Latifi, on the other hand, I'm not too sure. But then, considering what Alex Albon has done, I mean, a 9th place at Miami off the back of, I think, an 11th in Imola and a 10th in Australia. It's those sort of lower point scoring positions that I just talked about, where it could get quite interesting. I think for Latifi to score points, he's got to have one hell of a race, and,
Yeah,
and a few DNFs
definitely.
from some
I
other
agree
drivers, I
with
think,
you.
as well.
Now, just before we wrap up, last question. How do you rate Miami? How do you rate the race out of 10?
Um, I can't say I paid much attention to it, to be honest, just because, I mean, as you mentioned, I think last week it was on quite late, and I had to get up at like 7 o'clock in the morning the next day. So, but from the highlights that I did watch, it was okay, I think. I know, just scrolling through social media, people's giving it like 2s and 3s, whereas you had some people giving it, well, actually, it's a 7 or an 8. So, so I'm not really sure which way to go. I think a lot of the people giving it the lower rating was because of the TV direction, and every time you saw a potential overtake, they cut to shots of the crowd or something. I personally can't comment on that because I didn't watch it live. I've only seen the highlights. But from what I've seen,
Yeah.
it was average at best, I think. Probably a generous 5, I think, is what I give it. But that is partly because the action I did see wasn't. It was okay. It was decent. I mean, you had the overtake between Verstappen and Leclerc. That was a really good move from Verstappen. I think you had the
Yeah,
battle
very
between
good.
Perez and Sainz as well, and then was the incident between Norris and Gasly and Vettel and Schumacher. But there was a lot of nothing, I feel like, in that first half of the race, whereas the second half was a bit more action packed, but not compared to something like Russia last year, for example, when it choked it down with rain with the last 5-10 minutes. Yeah, but from what I've seen, I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I'd give it a 5 out of 10 as well. I thought as soon as the lights went out and Verstappen went past Leclerc on lap 9, I just thought, you know what, I think Verstappen's, set the tone of the race. I can't see him losing it. Then we saw Norris and his collision with Gasly on lap 41. Good battle with Perez and Carlos Sainz. But yeah, I thought other than that, we didn't really get the excitement that Miami was supposed to deliver. Well, I don't mean supposed to, but it didn't really deliver that excitement that we all need to see. But yeah, 5 out of 10 for Miami.
I will just say one thing about excitement. I think the grid walk from Martin Brundle, where he's just trying to find basically any F1 driver and keeps bumping into all these celebrities. Like, I can't remember who. I know David Beckham was there, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. I can't remember who else was there, but just loads and loads of,
Venus sisters.
the Williams sisters were there.
Sorry, yeah, Williams sisters.
And yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head who else was there, but I mean, him just. I mean, we remember what happened with Megan Thee Stallion at last year's US
Yes,
Grand
I
Prix
did.
at
Yeah,
Kota.
yeah, I remember that.
It's just that, and I think it went viral. Also, I haven't properly seen it. I need to watch it, but from the clips I have seen, it was really entertaining. Perhaps more entertaining than the race.
Yeah, indeed. Well, this has been the F1 Stop show. We hope you've enjoyed the episode. And do remember to follow us on our social media channels, Twitter on the F1 Stop Show, our Instagram as well with F1 Stop Show Pod. And you can also email us with any questions or comments you have at f1stopshow@gmail.com. I've been your host, Sam Oney, and it's a goodbye from me. Bye bye. And it's a goodbye from Wes.
Bye bye.
And we hope you enjoy the week ahead.